Hello, I'm Alan Cowley, and this is the video version of the second of 3 articles I've written about the importance of parental participation. The title of this article is How the Experience of Homeschooling Could Be Improved by Parental Participation. One of the sad consequences of the high levels of teacher workload is that teachers tend to prioritize the immediate needs of their pupils, thereby sacrificing opportunities to use this time for their own well-being and professional learning. In this, the second of 3 articles, I'll explore how one simple but enduring misconception has not only blocked the benefits to pupil achievement, as shown in an abundance of independent academic research, but also unwittingly increased teacher workload and stress levels. I'll be exploring the need to provide teachers and school leaders with reliable research results and school-based evidence that prepares the ground for more productive and less stressful relationships with parents, and how a national strategy for the introduction of parental participation in schools can resolve this issue, remove a misconception that has been hindering the progress of the inclusion agenda for decades, and provide a workload-neutral means of delivering a parent pledge that both parents and teachers appreciate and support. It's important to point out from the outset that I'm by no means pointing a finger of blame here. One of the last things that teachers have time for is to read through research, but it is vital that those working in schools understand the importance of academic research that demonstrates benefits to their own well-being whilst improving outcomes for young people. Effective parental participation in their children's learning is a case in point. Many of the practices we have within the teaching profession have been around for generations, and it is an easy thought progression to think that if it's been here for decades, it must be working. Take the way we report to parents, for example. During one of my courses, I asked the question of teachers, if you have or had a school-aged child who does not go to the school that you work in, are you happy with the way their school provides you with information about what they're doing in school and how well they're doing? I haven't kept a tally, but most staff are openly critical and label the whole process as a total waste of time. No one is saying that the range of functionality provided by the parental engagement tools used by most schools do not provide invaluable, cost-reducing, and efficiency-raising benefits for both schools and parents. But it's only when we look at consistent findings that arise from decades of conclusive academic research that you realize there is some key functionality missing from those parental engagement tools currently being used in schools. The evidence shows that the missing functionality is transformational. It improves academic outcomes for the vast majority of pupils. It can narrow the achievement gap, improve relationships between home and school, reduce teacher workload and stress, and provide the parent pledge. The Parental Participation Campaign aims to ensure that this functionality is inserted into every school's parental engagement toolbox. This brings me to a misunderstanding we need to correct. There are 2 interacting points we need to consider here. One of the facts of school life that teachers and school leaders have become accustomed to is that communication between school and parents within the current functionality of their chosen parental engagement tool tends to be structured around that same direction, school to home. Yes, parents can respond to prompts from the school, paying for school dinners, trips, items of uniform and equipment, booking tickets for events and slots for parents' consultation evenings, or providing assistance with homework. But by and large, parents are responding to a need expressed by the school. Naturally, other forms of communication are also used: telephone, email, letter, face-to-face conversation. And I'm sure that video conferencing now also features on this list. But as it is the approach most commonly used, one-way communication became the default purpose for communication with parents. Before the pandemic, the closest that most teachers came to the experience of remote schooling was setting homework, or work for pupils subjected to long-term absence due to illness or hospitalization. The widely accepted rules for homework are that it should only be used for consolidation of learning, revision, or providing challenge based on prior learning. But new learning should only take place under teacher supervision. There were many problems faced by schools as they battled to modify existing curriculum delivery at the start of the first lockdown. The way teachers adapted and devised appropriate methods of communication to provide and collect work, then follow up with feedback, became even more complex and have been well covered in the press and in some of the research as well. Essentially, the research agrees that the success of pupils to engage with the remote schooling provided revolved around parental income and access to individual devices connected to the internet. Beyond that, there were heroic efforts that saw senior staff delivering paper-based work packs to homes on a daily basis, along with school lunch packs, worksheets printed in school and sent by post, parents who owned just one mobile phone grappling with the problems of sharing that device with more than one child, or working with emailed worksheets on a phone screen, and teachers, unused to online teaching, had to learn new methods of delivery. Given the circumstances, it was inevitable that the common assumption already applied to homework tasks, that parents would be on hand to assist, would be called into play to assist with online schooling. But did we consider whether parents had the ability, capacity, or understanding to provide that support? What were we expecting from parents? In spite of the fact that teaching in the UK is an all-graduate profession that takes great pride in providing differentiated learning to meet the individual needs of pupils, delivers a curriculum that has become increasingly specialised and sometimes requires delivery methods that are quite prescriptive and specialised, the profession's approach to homeschooling assumes that parents are a homogeneous group who, regardless of the standard of their own attainment gained in school, the pupil and the number of pupils and students of different ages within their own family, their personal circumstances, the demands of their own wider work and family commitments, that parents can support their children's learning, regardless of the subject and level of learning in the home. But how did parents feel about this? How well equipped are parents to act as teachers or teachers' assistants? The Sutton Trust research on the impact of COVID-19 on social mobility, conducted during the first lockdown, looked at the levels of confidence parents felt when supporting their own children's schooling. The parents were classified by the highest level of the education qualifications or awards that they had personally achieved. The data indicated that 42% of parents overall were confident supporting all of their children. This figure could be further broken down to 47% of middle-class parents and 37% of working-class parents. However, when we use the same data, looked at from the point of view of parents who were not confident supporting their children's schooling, the situation is far less positive. 53% of middle-class parents and 67% of working-class parents lacked the confidence to support their own children's remote schooling. Furthermore, the data then goes on to show that this lack of confidence was experienced by nearly 25% of parents with postgraduate degrees, master's degrees, and just under 40% of parents with undergraduate degrees, so Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science. At the very least, these figures suggest that 4,200,000 pupils live in households where their parents were not confident in supporting the remote schooling. It's important that we recognise the scale and scope of this issue. I know some great teachers and school leaders who, during lockdown, really struggled to assist their own children with their remote schooling, while setting work and providing feedback for their own classes. If experienced teachers were struggling, is there any wonder that parents, some of whom had no exam qualifications to their names at all, found the task impossible? How were professional parents employed outside the key worker group but working from home expected to manage their workloads whilst facing questions from their children about subjects their parents probably knew nothing about? So how can a strategy to introduce parental participation get to the heart of this problem and resolve it? The problems created by the current approach by schools to their relationship with parents and the need to provide parents with information they can use to support and encourage their children's learning is recognised within the Centre for Social Justice's national campaign for parental participation, and to a large extent, the Promised Parent Pledge within the latest Education White Paper also. One of the most highly acclaimed research papers on the subject of how all parents can encourage and support their children's schooling says, quoting, "To be precise, the most significant factor was home discussion. Regardless of social class, the more parents and children converse with each other in the home, the more pupils achieved in school." End quote. And that was from research by Sui Chu and Wilms in 1996. As I will be demonstrating in my third article, the parental behaviour that delivers the benefits to pupil achievement is not associated with parents teaching their children, but parents supporting their children's learning through positive encouragement. It is an innate desire within us all, regardless of our background, to gain parental approval, which in turn provides the intrinsic motivation that drives pupil achievement and attainment. As you will see in my next article, a similar process within parents drives the desire to praise and celebrate the successes of their children. It is clear from the figures presented in the Sutton Trust report that parents from disadvantaged backgrounds are not alone in their lack of confidence in supporting their children's schooling. And here I pause to emphasize the importance of the vocabulary I've been using throughout this article. It matters because it sits at the heart of the problem highlighted during the lockdowns, which for the first time has provided evidence from the parents' point of view en masse. More recently, research, again, the Sutton Trust Learning from Lockdown 2021 can be quoted here, has shown how institutionalized assumptions have been so ingrained over decades that teachers and other experienced educationalists find it hard to question accepted practice. Moreover, the research methodology itself reveals how ingrained these false assumptions are. I've already mentioned the Sutton Trust research paper, Learning in Lockdown, in January 2021, which takes its data from various sources. One of the graphs shown represents the findings from a teacher chat survey of secondary school teachers in England on January the 13th, 2021. The data is presented in a series of bar charts entitled Reasons for Not Engaging with Online Learning bracket, secondary school teachers, bracket, by deprivation level of school. At the time of writing, I'm still waiting for official information about the methodology used within this survey. So the best I can do at present is present the two most likely methods, which are that the designers of the survey, one, gave teachers 9 different graded options of response to choose from, or two, that the survey designers grouped responses by the teachers in the closest of 9 approximations. Now, the structure of the teacher tact that they use for its surveys would make the former a little bit more likely of the two. The reasons given within the survey for teachers about why pupils were not engaging with remote schooling were: 1, limited / no parental support for learning; 2, general, long-standing poor attitude towards schoolwork in general; 3, lack of independent study skills, e.g. self-discipline, organisation; 4, lack of access to suitable technology; 5, some form of SEND, making accessibility to work an issue; 6, age / maturity of students; 7, mixed messages from central government; 8, another reason; 9, not relevant, all pupils are engaging with online learning. The Sutton Trust report goes on to say that the most common reason that teachers gave for pupils not engaging with online learning were, quote, limited or no parental support, 60%. This is revealing in more ways than one. How could teachers have come by the information they need to reach this conclusion unless by assumption? Do they believe what they are saying? And if so, is this attitude a self-limiting one that ignores the potential of what parents are good at? Perhaps the question posed in that survey should have been expressed in a different way. One that recognized the difference between schooling and learning, and the consolidation of schooling. In which case, the question, and here it is, the most common reason that teachers gave for pupils not engaging with online schooling would have been: answer, in spite of sharing a love for learning, their parents were not familiar with the curriculum content. This paints a very different picture about the relationships parents can have with their children's schooling and the expectation and pressure schools unwittingly place on their relationship with parents. As a profession, we have to move away from what can be seen as a default assumption that parents are not interested in what their children do in school. This was an issue picked up in an article published in Schools Week in April 2022, written by Jonathan Simon, head of the education practice at Public First. Quote, Public First do a huge amount of qualitative research with parents. Almost every single one wants to help their children in any way they can. They mostly trust their schools implicitly, especially at primary. But probe underneath the surface, and many of them will say, almost embarrassed, that they often don't really know how their child is doing and what they can do to help. Parents want a meaningful relationship with their children's school that recognizes the important role that parents play in the lives of their children and which focuses on information relating to their child. What I'm saying may be considered to be revolutionary by some, but the test of seeing the difference between the approach I am advocating and the approaches being used in most schools now is whether you are getting the benefits within the well-established academic research. Other than raised attainment, a more comprehensive list of those benefits would include raised achievement, self-esteem and aspirations, increased motivation and engagement, improved behaviour, increased attendance at school, better emotional adjustment, and greater well-being. And that research is quoted by Deforge and Abushar, 2003, Lopez and Donovan, 2009, Silver et al. In 2003, Goodall and Vorhaus, 2011, Epstein, 2001, Henderson and Matt, 2002, James, 2007, El Nokal et al., 2010, and Hornby and Lafale, 2011. Your school will have a parental engagement tool. But have you seen these predicted benefits over the years? On a national level, if what most school leaders think of as being parental engagement is parental engagement, mentioned in the academic research, why are we facing an unparalleled attendance crisis and feel the need for the establishment of behaviour hubs? Not to mention the achievement gap that before the pandemic had remained more or less static for decades. The CSJ's proposed parental participation strategy recognises the importance of the functionality that schools already rely on to manage administrative contact with parents, many of which improve efficiency, save money, and make life easier for both the school establishment, parents, and teachers. But by itself, this approach is not enough. We need to enable a role for parents that harnesses their strengths, not their weaknesses. This is where a parental participation strategy can help. The Centre for Social Justice's campaign launch report recognises the need for a wider understanding. I quote, "Parental participation incorporates parental involvement and parental engagement." These labels have previously been confused within the academic research itself. Although for the last 15 years at least, academics have tried to use parental involvement to describe those administrative necessities that support the pupil's schooling, and parental engagement to describe how schools can help parents support their child's learning. In an age where it is a common occurrence for exercise books to be kept in schools, many parents only get the opportunity to see what their children are doing in class on a very few occasions during the year, most commonly at parents' consultation meetings. I quote now from Goodall and Montgomery, quote, "Engagement with children's learning may not equate to and should not be judged on the basis of engagement with school. Many parents find engagement with schools difficult, but still have a strong desire to be engaged in their children's learning and education." In my next article, I'll explain how we have solved that problem without creating a workload for teachers, actually just the opposite, and increased the number of positive conversations in 89% of homes about what children have been doing in school, and how 95% of parents said that they had a better understanding of how to support their children's learning, all without a single exercise book leaving the school premises. In the high-pressure environment of today's schools, where the focus of enabling the highest possible levels of examination performance is used in the evaluation of a school's success, it is easy to understand how teachers see schooling as the most important element of a child's learning. But it is not. As we have seen, schooling is a subset of learning. It contains all of those subjects and topics that schools teach. And we know that the content will vary from school to school and from subject to subject, depending on which examination board a school follows. Schooling accounts for 20% of all we learn. Learning encompasses everything else we learn during our lifetime from a very wide range of sources, making up 80% of what we learn. It is by developing a love for learning in all its forms, hobbies, participation in arts or sports clubs, membership of youth groups, cultural groups, or religious groups, community-based projects, work experience, participation in family activities, sharing responsibility for cooking a family meal, intergenerational family celebrations, family trips and holidays, all of which provide opportunities to learn that parents can have the greatest impact on their children's school performance. They do this by showing an active interest, such as making positive comments or asking simple questions about their child's school-based learning. Vitally, the national campaign also recognises the importance of enabling parental participation in learning. This approach is far simpler, far more effective, and far more profound than expecting parents to engage with schooling or helping with homework. It allows parents to do what parents do best, and it needs no educational qualifications. Returning to where I started, we have to use proven science. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. The methodology that I'll be revealing in my next article will provide evidence from the independent academic research conducted by Professor Janet Goodall from Swansea University. Janet is one of the most widely published academics writing on the subject of effective parental engagement. The research was conducted as part of our award within the DFE EdTech Innovation Initiative, and it's his research that was subsequently submitted to and validated by the process of academic peer review. We will look at the recent research on brain development from a joint Harvard-MIT research project that used brain scanning to see the brain function in the areas of the brain associated with language and learning development in young children, and how this is stimulated through simple conversations with the child's nurturers. We will consider the enduring power that parental approval has on the human mind for people of all ages, and we will look at the science that underpins it. Yes, parental engagement works not only with those preschool and of compulsory school age, it can carry on motivating us throughout our lives. We will consider how an assumption that schools' reliance on data and the need to reduce teacher workload by using technology to remove time-consuming tasks, such as report writing, would naturally convert into information parents would welcome and understand. In adopting this approach, we have overcomplicated the parent-school relationship and convinced many parents that they have nothing to add to their child's learning experience. Where parents wanted simply to have regular updates about their children's achievements and see how they were facing their challenges and whether or not they were happy in school, we gave them spreadsheets. More importantly, we will discover how a new approach, bringing a unique concept that moved with the times to harness the potential of technology designed for the 21st century rather than the end of the 20th century, provides a solution that enables schools and all parents to work together to improve pupil learning. Thank you for listening.